Hey friends, it's Corey from Hey Let's Make Stuff. If you've watched any of my recent Sublimation Fix-It videos, you'll know that this video has been a long time coming. Today we are going to talk about swapping ink out of an Epson EcoTank printer. There are several reasons you might want to do this. So the first reason is that you want to put a different type of sublimation ink in your printer. So maybe you have Hippo ink in your printer right now and you want to add Printer's Jack ink, and I will teach you how to do that. Another reason might be because you want to actually change the type of ink that is in your printer. So maybe you have an Epson EcoTank printer that has regular ink and you want to put sublimation ink in it. Or maybe it has sublimation ink and you want to convert it back to a regular printer. In today's video, I have 4 different methods for swapping ink in your printer. I wanted this to be very comprehensive, so hopefully one of these ways will work for you. If you are watching this video because your Epson EcoTank printer has a clog, however, I want you to go back and watch the video before this one. In that video, I go through how to get rid of a clog in your Epson EcoTank printer, and hopefully that method will work for you and you won't have to do any of the methods that I'm showing you here. Let's start with option number 1. Option number 1 is for if you have a type of sublimation ink already in your Epson EcoTank and you want to try a different type of Epson sublimation ink. I chatted with one of my friends and we sort of came to the conclusion that a lot of different sellers on Amazon are actually using probably the same formulation of ink, if not the same exact ink. So the first option you have is to just top off the ink you have with a different brand. Now I know you've heard us all say you can't do this, but after doing some more research, I think I would actually be comfortable topping off the Hippo ink that is currently in my printer with something like Printer's Jack ink. I can't guarantee that they are the exact same, but I feel like they would be close enough that I probably won't have any issues. That being said, there are always no guarantees in this sort of sublimation game, and there is a very small chance that some sort of compounds in the inks might react and make your ink gelatinous or some other problem that you absolutely cannot fix and it will completely ruin your printer. But for me, I think I would actually be comfortable just topping off the ink I have with a different brand. The second option, which I am definitely not going to show you here, is dumping your ink tanks. As I was researching how to do this, I came across a post, which I am going to go ahead and link in the description below, that basically has you turning this printer upside down and draining out all of the ink. Now, it looks fairly easy, but it also looks like it is an absolute disaster waiting to happen. I feel like the odds of you actually contaminating the one ink with another color are really high, and it also looks like it could be extremely messy, and I sort of value not having ink all over the place. So I am going to link to this dumping ink method, but if you want to give it a shot, please do. If you do, please let me know how it goes down in the comments. It's just not for me. But the site that I will send you to does have a pretty comprehensive tutorial to do that, so if you want to do it, go for it. I was really hoping that this third method would be one I could use and I could share with all of you. The problem is it doesn't work on every EcoTank, and it doesn't actually work on my EcoTank. This is a process from my friend Daniel. Hi Daniel, thank you for the help. It worked on one of his Epson EcoTank printers, but it did not work on one of his other printers, nor did it work on my printer. However, I wanted to show it to you in case it does work on your printer, and it will save you from having to go to step 4, which is much messier. There is still a small amount of risk with this method. You could easily drip ink into one of the other inkwells and contaminate it, but overall this is a fairly safe thing to do. I think would be much better than trying the dump it out method that I mentioned before, and it's probably easier than the 4th method, which I'm going to do here in a little bit. So if it does work for you, this is probably the way you'll want to go. So even though I can't actually do this method myself, I am going to show you the process up to the point where I can't actually make it work, but I think overall you'll understand the process, so if you want to give this process a shot, you totally can. Here are the things you're going to need for this method. You're going to need something to protect your table. So I've got sort of an industrial size garbage bag here. You're going to want some sort of, throwaway plastic tray to collect your syringes in so you don't get that ink everywhere. You are going to need syringes, and I'm going to link to this exact syringe down in the description below, as well as these long, thin metal tips. Specifically, you'll need them to be able to get inside that ink tank, and I will link to exactly what I'm using down below. You're also going to want some jars or some other receptacles for the used ink. You're going to want some gloves, as well as paper towels, wipes, anything else that you can kind of use to keep your work area as neat as possible. All right, I have everything set up for this process, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so that you can see what I'm doing. I want to say thank you to my mom, Judy. She's actually behind the camera today. Normally I film by myself, but because of the way that this is going to be filmed, it's just going to be a little bit different. So everybody say hi, Judy, and give her a wave. I really appreciate her being here today. But I think that having her here will help me get better angles of what we're actually doing here. So, again, you may have questions as we go along, so please leave those down in the comments. And again, this is number 3. This is the process that didn't work for me, so I'm going to do my best to sort of show you what you need to do. And I'm not going to do it myself, but hopefully that will be enough for you to take on this project yourself. To start, you want to make sure that your printer is turned off and unplugged, and then you want to actually shim it from the back so that it is leaning forward just a little bit. For me, I found a little hammer. I'm just going to put it underneath the back of my printer a little bit to lift it off so all the ink will run toward the front of the printer. Next, open the lid of the printer. Some printers may have a little kickstand to help hold up that lid, and then you're going to open up the top of the ink tanks. Now, if you're doing this to unclog some sort of clog you have in your printer and none of what I did in the last video worked for you, you can just open up the one color that you're having an issue with and do that single color. If you're swapping out all of the inks, you'll need to do all of them, but you'll do them one at a time. So let's start with the cyan. Next, grab your syringe, and the idea is to put the tip of the syringe down through the valve and into the ink tank. Now, my problem here is that this actually didn't go any farther than you can see it here. On some printers, you'll be able to get it down and into the ink tank all the way to the bottom, and you're good to go. If yours doesn't and it just stops here, sorry, you've got to move to method number 4. But if you do get this to go all the way down, you're basically going to draw the ink out of the tank and into your syringe. Now, I have a 30 milliliter syringe here. You don't want to go above 20 because you definitely don't want to accidentally pull this out too far and get printer ink everywhere. So in 20 milliliter bursts, pull out the ink and then discard it into a glass jar. So clearly I don't have any ink here, but if you did, you'd be putting it in this glass jar so that you could get rid of it however your locality asks you to recycle inks and paints. You'll continue to draw out the ink until you can't draw out any more ink. Then you want to either clean out your syringe really, really well or use a different syringe for the other colors. The last thing you want to do is contaminate the other colors with the other colors here. You want to make sure that you're using a fresh, clean syringe for each color. Using this third method will still leave some ink in the printer, especially in the lines of the printer. So there is the ink tanks and they are connected with this plastic tubing to the actual print head. So there will still be some ink left in the printer, which means that there is still a small chance that there could be contamination between 2 different types of ink. So I would only use this method if it works for you, if you're moving sublimation ink to sublimation ink. If you want to go from sublimation ink to a pigment ink or pigment ink to sublimation ink, you're definitely going to want to try this 4th method. Now we are on to the 4th method, and I have to say, I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway because you guys keep asking, so we're going to make it happen. I'm going to be taking the Hippo ink completely out of this printer. I'm going to drain it completely, and I'm going to put in Printer's Jack ink. For this 4th method, you're going to need most of everything you needed for that last method. So we are going to need something to protect our table, a tray for our dirty syringes, some sort of container or vessel for the old ink. We're going to need gloves to protect our hands. I really should have been wearing them in my last demonstration, but I forgot, so definitely wear gloves. And then you're also going to need a Phillips head screwdriver, as well as syringes with this particular tip. I will again link this down in the description below, but these work perfectly for the tubing inside of the machine to be able to draw the ink out, not just from the tanks, but also from the lines. You'll also want paper towels, wipes, anything else that will help you keep your area as clean as possible. Each Epson EcoTank is different, so you might have a different number of screws than I do. It looks like I have 5, so I'm going to remove these screws so I can take this top plate off here. You want to keep your screws somewhere where you're going to find them. I'm going to put them in the lid of my jar here, just so I know where they are. You may also want to take pictures as you go so that you know exactly where everything goes when you put it back together. Once you have the screws out, you should be able to lift this piece off. So I just ran into my first issue, and that is that the printer head carriage here was actually locked over here on the right, which means that I was not going to be able to access it. So obviously I am not an Epson tech, so I sort of hacked how to get this to not be locked over here. I couldn't find a setting for it, so I started a print head clean. It moved a little bit and I unplugged it, and now I can move this back and forth. You don't want to force it out of that locked position. Now, I know all of the Epson techs are probably going to come for me, but honestly, you've already wasted your warranty because you put sublimation ink in the printer, so might as well give it a try yourself. Now we need to remove these small screws from the carriage. I thought I might need a smaller screwdriver, but my larger screwdriver actually worked. This little screw here was really tight, but I was able to get it out. Next, I'm going to remove this cover off of the top of the carriage. Just be really careful. I actually did break a little piece off here when I was taking it off. I don't think it's going to matter, but you know, you don't want to break your printer, so be more careful than I was. Now we have access to our ink lines as well as the dampers. The dampers are basically kind of what holds the ink before it goes into the print head. All right, I went ahead and did the black one so that I could learn how to do it off camera before I actually show you what I'm doing. And I will say that it's not particularly easy. I don't love it. The Epson guys are probably gonna hate me, but you know, this is why my printer's already out of warranty. There's no reason for me to have somebody from Epson try and work on it. So we're gonna do it myself. I don't know if you can see here in the camera here, but I did make quite a mess when I was working on the black. I tried to clean it up, but it's still a little messy. Hopefully it won't be a problem, but just know that it really is a very messy process, as you'll see. So let's move on to the yellow. So I've got my yellow damper here, and I'm going to actually remove it by clicking this little tab in the back, and that should allow me to pull up on the damper. Now, part of the problem here is that some of these are trapped by the other tubing, so I'm going to be really careful here and try and pull this yellow guy out. Now you can see here that the black tubing is making it a little bit difficult, but hopefully I'll be able to pull it out without having to pull out the black. We'll see. There we go. So I've got my yellow damper out. Now I'm going to remove the tubing that goes to the damper. You can see this little tubing here, and it goes to the damper. I did spill a little bit of black, so I'm expecting to spill a little yellow here, but I'm going to do my best. I'm just going to remove it carefully, just like this. Just like that. So I only spilled a little bit. That was much better than the black. So I'm going to have my mom hand me a paper towel here so I can clean this little bit of yellow off my fingers so I don't smear it everywhere. So I'm going to grab the end of my yellow tube here, and I'm going to insert my syringe tip into the yellow tube. Just like this. You want it to have like a nice seal here, and then you're basically going to draw that yellow ink through the tube and out of the tank. So when I draw back on my syringe here, it will pull out that yellow ink. It does take a little bit of effort here. Now I'm only going to pull it to about the 40 because I really don't want to accidentally pull this out so far that I end up with yellow ink everywhere. So you can see I've pulled out this much ink. That's worked pretty well. I'm going to carefully remove the tip from the tube here. Then I'm going to put this in my jar here. I already have the black ink in there that I already did. Just like that. I'm going to carefully clean my finger here because I've got some ink on it there. And I'm going to clean the tip of my tube here, or the tip of my syringe here as well. All right. I'm going to do the same thing. So you can see there, when I pulled all the rest of the ink through, it pulled a bunch of air with it. That means I should have a lot of that yellow ink out. I'll keep pulling here. Remove it here. I put it in my jar over here. Again, I'm going to clean my glove and the tip of the syringe. We're going to do it one more time. And you can see here that there's just not much left in there at all. Now it's time to do the damper. Now this part was definitely the most difficult part. I don't have a good way to do it. I wish I could show you some magical way to really get this damper clean. But I do have my hole down here, and I'm going to use the syringe in the hole, just like this. And I'm going to remove as much ink as I can. The problem is there's actually a valve in there that actually makes the ink come out, which makes this a very messy process. So I'm going to pull out as much ink as I can. It's not going to be that much because there's not much in the damper. Maybe the Epson guys can chime in and tell me how to do this better. So there is going to still be some ink left in the damper. I'm not sure how to get it out. I really do wish I could get this more empty, but we're going to put it back in as is. So I'm going to go ahead and reattach this little tube to that little slot there. I don't know what all these printer parts are called. Just like that. And then I can carefully maneuver this around the black and slide it back into place. So I thought I'd show you over here just how much trash I ended up with. I ended up with all sorts of paper towels, a bunch of pairs of gloves, and even some Q-tips to try and clean up some of the messy ink. So, like I said, I thought this would be a messy process, and clearly it was. Now I can go ahead and put everything back together. So to start, I'm going to add that cover back on top of the carriage. Sort of just snaps onto all of these little brackets, and then I can carefully replace this little baby screw. And then we can replace this plastic piece here. All right, that was super messy, even messier than I expected it to be. Do I recommend it? Absolutely not. Are you still gonna do it? Probably, and that's okay. It's your printer, and especially if you've put sublimation ink in it, you've already voided the warranty, so give it a shot. I do have a few more things to note. So first is what to do with your leftover ink here. So here in Bellingham, where I live, I double checked and I can take it to basically our hazardous waste drop off, along with, where you drop off paint and oil. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep it in this little jar and I'm gonna drop it off there. And then next, to get the last of that ink out, to get the last of the ink out of the dampers, anything I couldn't get, I'm gonna basically printer purge sheets until they are pretty much blank. So I do have a printer purge sheet for you. It is Sublimation number S26, and it can be found in my craft library at heyletsmakestuff.com/library. So you go to that page, you'll ask for the password. Once you have the password, you can go back to that same page, enter it, and then you'll be taken to my craft library. Here you can get the printer purge pages by going to S25. You can go to the little sublimation section and find S25, or you can use the find function on your computer. So if you're on a Mac, you can use Command F. If you are on a PC, you can use Control F, and you can search for S25. These are the same files that I had in my last video about clearing a clog, but you can use those same printer purge sheets basically to run the last of the ink out of your printer. I was chatting with a friend who was helping me with this, and he said that he'd probably run at least 30 pages of that. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and I'll be back in just a minute. All right, I ran a bunch of printer purge pages to get the last of that ink out of the printer. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you what I've got here. So this is the first printer purge page that I did, and I was actually really excited to see this because we have our cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and none of the colors are tainted by any of the other colors. So I was really glad that I didn't mess that particular part up. But I knew that there was still ink in the tanks, so I kept printing these pages. On my second page, you can see that the black ran out. So after this, I had no black ink, and I continued to print the printer purge pages for the cyan, the magenta, and the yellow. On printer purge page number 9, I started to run out of the magenta. And on printer purge page number 11, I ran out of the cyan. After that, I decided to print the printer purge page that is entirely yellow. So I had quite a bit more yellow left in there. So you can see here that this is just yellow, but then I started using the full sheets, and you can see here that this one's yellow. And it took me another, I think, 5 or 6 pieces of paper to get to a fully white sheet. Now that I have a fully white sheet, I think the best course of action would be to actually let this sit for 12 to 24 hours to make sure that there's not any extra ink in there, just something that hasn't gotten through the lines, especially if you are converting this back to regular pigment ink instead of sublimation ink. If you're using sublimation ink, I think you're probably good to go ahead and put your new sublimation ink in there. But if you are converting it one way or another to a different type of ink, I would definitely give it 12 to 24 hours and then try printing more printer purge pages just to make sure that there is no ink left in there. I also have my new ink to put in this printer, so I'm going with Printer's Jack ink this time around. I have a whole video about converting an Epson printer to this ink, so I'm not going to take the time to put this ink in there at this moment, but I will link to that video. And that's 4 different ways to swap the ink inside your Epson EcoTank printer. I'm actually really surprised that that 4th way worked. I was really nervous going into this video. Normally I practice things before I show them to you on video, but I couldn't really do that with this. So I was really excited to see that it actually worked. If you found this video helpful and you want to do this yourself, please give this video a like. Follow my channel for more sublimation, Cricut, and laser content. I'll see you next week.